Hello, AP World History students, and welcome to my first ever screencast recording. I hope to get through it very quickly this time. This is my third take. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about family and gender, foreign trade and technology, and then religion in China, and hopefully finish this up in about 12 minutes. So filial piety continues in Ming and Qing China. You might recall that this is a concept that goes back to the Confucian era, and this is a concept that has society very well ordered. We must show a respectful relationship and submission to those above us. So a child to his or her parent, and this extends to all of society, an individual to his or her emperor. Now, in Chinese society, the eldest son is most definitely going to be favored. All of the inheritance goes down the male line through the eldest son. Patriarchy overall increases. When a girl gets married, she joins her husband's family. Now, to this day, people that I know who are from China, and when I was in China, it was observed by me that women are very much obligated to care for the family of her husband. Even if they have PhDs, even if they have very successful careers, when it comes to her relationship within the family, she is subjected to her husband's rule and the obligation to care for her husband's parents when they become elderly. Infanticide during the Ming and Qing dynasty is not uncommon, and infanticide has occurred around the world. So basically what this means is the killing of infants. So especially infant girls or possibly disabled infants might be killed at this time. Even in the modern era, we see selective abortions of girls in modern day China, which has led to an imbalance of males to females. Foot binding increases. Foot binding had been introduced hundreds of years earlier during the Tang Dynasty, but it increases at this time. Now let's think about, why would someone bind their daughter's feet? Well, first of all, it shows wealth. If a woman's feet are bound, she can't run, she doesn't have to work out in the fields, and she's considered to be very attractive and a potentially attractive mate for a male. Widows are also encouraged not to remarry, and in fact, they're encouraged perhaps to commit suicide to join their husband. This is something that we saw in India. The practice started with an S. See if you can see or remember what that was called. Men will control the divorce, and like in many cultures, infidelity is a grounds of divorce, but just talking too much or being annoying, to be honest, would be grounds for divorce. And being a divorced woman in China would be a very difficult path indeed. Now let's talk about population for a minute. Only 11% of the land in China is arable during this time. That means only about 11% can be farmed. We have a population in 1600 of about 160 million people. During the last years of the Ming Dynasty, rebellion and war would reduce the population so that by 1650, we are below 150 million in population. But as you can see, by 1750, the population has increased to about 225 million. And why does this happen? Well, first of all, we have more stability in China. We also have the rich American crops that would increase life expectancy, that would introduce a variety of nutrients to one's diet. Now, foreign trade. China just does some things really well. For example, tea. We bought some when we were there, and it's really good. Could be a little bit warmer. They also have really nice silk. We also bought some when we were there, and that picture on the bottom are some nice healthy silkworms. Their silk is beautiful. Ming and Qing want to limit foreign influence and trade. They value their tea and their silk and their porcelain, and there's really not a whole lot that they want from the Europeans, except possibly silver, which, as you might recall, they're getting a lot of it from the European colonies in the Americas. So they very much become isolationists at this point in time. They closely supervise trade. They limit Portuguese merchants to Macau and the Brits to Guangzhou. Now, the Brits really love Chinese tea and Chinese silk, and the Portuguese as well. And so they give them silver primarily in exchange for those highly treasured goods that the Chinese make really well. As far as technology goes, they completely favor political and social stability over innovation. Just think of all the amazing things that China had produced in the centuries prior to this, but now they just completely stagnate in their innovation. They have a large labor force. They don't need to innovate in order to provide labor-saving devices, and actually, they end up buying European cannons. This is a picture of one in the city of Xi'an, which is where the terracotta warriors are. And these cannons were built based on Chinese gunpowder technology. Social classes are very much dictated by one's education. The scholar bureaucrats, as you can recall, the gentry, these are the people that have gone to the Confucian schools and have taken those excruciatingly long 8-legged essays that would take 3 days. Imagine that. You guys take an essay for 55 minutes and it seems long. These guys took essays for 3 days and they got passed at the very top level. They wore distinctive clothing. They might have symbols such as the phoenix or dragon that only they would be allowed to wear on their clothing. And they also had some immunities, as you can see there. Now, the working classes, I picture them very much like the picture I took here at a small village in southern China. This woman was walking down the street carrying a bamboo pole on her shoulder and selling beans. People were highly valued as those who worked the land were highly valued in Confucian society, and so there was no shame in being a peasant. At the bottom, we're going to have the military, the beggars, and the slaves. Now, Neo-Confucianism was an interesting concept. When I was, people asked me, what surprised you most about China? And I have to say it was the prevalence of Buddhism. I had no idea that Buddhism really was still a very, very strongly and largely practiced a belief system in China. Neo-Confucianism, under the leadership of Zhu Ji, they combined Confucian morality with Buddhist logic. So the idea here is that we have our ordered society, but we're going to reject the Buddhist mysticism, the idea of reincarnation, but we'll still accept the Buddhist ideas of asceticism, of ending suffering by ending desire. Now, both Confucianism and Buddhism will continue in Chinese society, and in fact that top picture shows some practitioners of Buddhism holding incense to their forehead, and the idea here is that the thoughts and cares of this world are escaping through this meditative path. Anyways, education is promoted at various levels in Neo-Confucianism, and the Hanlin Academy was a prestigious school in Beijing that just closed at the end of the Qing dynasty in 1911, and it was promoted at provincial schools as well. Now, Christianity in China, the Jesuits at the Council of Trent decided that they would get to know the language and the culture of the places that they were trying to convert. And so Jesuit Matteo Ricci went straight to Emperor Wanli's court. Now, he had never actually met Emperor Wanli, but he did attempt to convert his court. He came into China already having mastered Chinese. He translated massive works of massive works from Chinese into English, and he also brought Western technology into China, which they were fascinated by. The prisms which divide light into the rainbow spectrum, harpsichords, and especially chiming clocks. These all fascinated the Chinese, and the Qing emperors in particular really were interested in those technologies. However, in the end, they couldn't really the Christian missionaries couldn't really convince the Chinese about converting to Christianity. They argued that Christianity was completely consistent with Confucianism, that there would be no problem with practicing Confucianism and being Christian, and I think most people who look at the doctrines of both Confucianism and Christianity would agree with that. They allowed for ancestor veneration and said, hey, that's okay. You can still honor your ancestors. In fact, we do that too. But as I said, few converts. They especially didn't like the idea that the Christians had that Christianity was the one and only way. Eventually, Emperor Kangxi would ban Christian preaching in China altogether. So, as you can see, Christianity to this day is a very small religion, a very small minority in China. While there are many Chinese Christians in America, in China itself, there is very little evidence that the Christian missionaries ever really had much of an impact there. My husband's uncle was actually born and raised in a Christian mission in China, and recently went back to visit Shanghai where they were, and there, as I said, still not much of a Christian influence in China. So, final lesson from this: isolationism, lack of innovation, and Neo-Confucianism, and a failure of Christianity to reach the Chinese people. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this first simulcast, and keep your eyes open for one on Japan next.